What is a fact that has been told to you in a classroom that was eventually proven to be false? This is a story of a different time, but my mom grew up in Virginia before during the civil rights movement and went to a segregated school. In all her textbooks they showed slaves getting off slave ships with suitcases. I'd be interested in seeing these textbooks. Living in Tulsa, Oklahoma, my schools never once mentioned the race riots that happened here in 1921, when whites bombed and burned black Tulsa to the ground. They almost completely leveled it, and all because the black community was prospering. I get the sense that it is not taught almost anywhere in America today. In second grade, my teacher told the entire class that loathe meant to love very much. Throughout the day, she would tell us, "Oh, I loathe you, children. I loathe you too." Second grade teacher. She definitely knew. My teacher once told us that you only use 10% of your brain. A few years later, another teacher said if you really think you only need 10% of your brain, you should donate the other 90% to scientific research immediately. It came about from only 10% of your neurons are firing at any given moment. Arguably a crap statement itself. Then the ESP movement that was really popular during the 50s 70s got a hold of it and used it as an explanation for why they should get federal grants and TV appearances. If only JREF materials were mandatory in schools. Not me but my so. In primary school he asked his teacher how the propellers on a helicopter worked. The answer he got was that there was a large rubber band inside the helicopter that kept the propeller spinning really fast so the helicopter could take off. Sounds like your so was taught by Calvin's dad. My teacher told me that if the earth was 1 foot closer or 1 foot further from the sun, we'd all burn up or freeze. Ahem, the earth's orbit is elliptical. My basement is cold. Myth confirmed. My freaking 4th year teacher told us Neil Armstrong wasn't the first man on the moon, and that the Russians got there first. Even at that young age I knew the teacher was talking bollocks. In 6th grade my friend's teacher taught her class that pi is 3.141414141414141414, repeating forever. He got sent home for challenging her on it. That people have a more developed left or right brain hemisphere, and it makes them more logical versus more intuitive. Poland sent their cavalry against German tanks in World War II. Daddy long legs are incredibly poisonous, but can't penetrate human skin. I'd want my money back if education wasn't free. They did take all of your time. That next grade all essays would be required to be in cursive. Never happened, and now all essays are required as printouts or digital files. Not specifically my story, but during bio class, I think, in high school, while going over the reproductive system the teacher said that boys cannot pee when they have an erection. The urethra is blocked or some other stupid crap. A friend called her out on it as bulls. He said that's bulls. I just used the urinal with a boner. That the world would end on the 21st of December 2012. Teacher had to quit 2 months later because of depression and circulatory failure. Fun times. My biology teacher didn't understand evolution at all. She wasn't creationist or anything, but she taught us that a single organism's genes can change in its lifetime, depending on what it needs. She basically pulled a Michael Kelso and said the equivalent of, if I needed to go faster to catch prey, I'd grow rockets on my feet. If I'm not wrong, that's how Lamarck described evolution. Oh, there's loads. I eventually learned when I got older that much of what I had been taught in the early years of school was complete horse crap. The Athenian warrior runner Phidippides did not run 26 miles and drop dead at the gates of Athens after the battle with Sparta. The Celts are not originally from India. Blood is not blue until it touches the air. Columbus was not trying to prove the earth was round. People in the Middle Ages didn't think the earth was flat. The Celts are not originally from India. What? Why would someone even think that? What? The teacher is older than you and therefore knows best. That was actually in my school's honor code in the section about not arguing with teachers. Complete bulls. Benjamin Franklin's kite. Never freaking happened. But damn it if it wasn't in our elementary textbooks. Also, America won the Revolutionary War because we had something worth fighting for, but like the British soldiers were all, not really feeling it. Guess I'll just get bayoneted. It was kind of a sideshow. A science teacher in high school once adamantly insisted that you would die in space by freezing instantly, because he'd seen it in movies. I spoke up and said you don't freeze in space instantly because there's nothing physically there to take your thermal energy away. You die by decompression and then slowly radiate your heat away. I was super uncool. People made fun of me. Everybody left class that day thinking he was right. Not decompression, asphyxiation. The lack of pressure is dangerous and would kill you eventually, but it would take longer than you could hold your breath. The lack of oxygen is what would actually kill you. In my sophomore year high school, I had an English teacher who believed in spontaneous generation. She told us that maggots come from rotting meat, therefore flies come from rotting meat. This is exactly what Reddy disproved in his experiments in the 17th century. I mean the exact experiment. I can't remember exactly what poem we were analyzing when she said this, but it was a very far-fetched comparison to the text we were reading. I go to a private school, and when she said this, I was thinking my parents wasted their money. I have to say, good on you for knowing that. When I first started teaching, I over-prepared heavily for classes, fearing that students would ask me all sorts of questions related to the material. They almost never do. The lack of intellectual curiosity outside topics that will be on the test is disturbing. First grade, you can't subtract a bigger number from a smaller number. Third grade, sure you can, negative numbers, but you can't multiply by 0. Fourth grade, sure you can, the answer is also 0, but you can't have a fraction with non-integer components. Fifth grade, sure you can, it's just division, but you can't take the square root of a negative number. Seventh grade, sure you can, those are imaginary numbers, but you can't have an infinite series. High school, sure you can, that's basic pre-calc, but you can't do math on things that aren't numbers. College, you know what, frick all those guys. That if you tied two people's left arm behind their back and they had a child, and you tied that child's left arm behind their back and they had a child with another person whose left arm was tied behind their back, and so on and so forth, that eventually their descendants would be born with no left arm. They said it was how evolution worked, and that came from my favorite history teacher. I guess that's why they taught history and not biology. Schizophrenia consists of people who have split personalities. False. Schizophrenic patients have a variety of characteristics such as hallucinations and delusion, but never has their personality split. That is called dissociative personality disorder and is commonly associated with schizophrenia. Our health teacher told us it was impossible for a woman to get pregnant from rape. Something along the lines of her body simply wouldn't allow the fetus to grow. Yup. That's some dangerous crap to teach, for all kinds of reasons. My history teacher liked to add stuff onto her lessons, like how the King of England wrote in his diary that nothing of notice happened today, on the day the Declaration of Independence reached him. In truth, he apparently didn't keep a diary. A ton of stuff in chemistry changes every year. That women cannot have hemophilia. My biology teacher then went on to add that if they could carry this, menstruation would be fatal as the blood would not stop. That this symbol meant that the item to the left was greater than the item to the right. Only one person in the classroom decided to argue, based on a, the obvious implications of a little end and a big end, and b, the use of the symbol in musical notation to denote volume. He later had his mum visit the school and show the teacher a book. Only at that point did the teacher revisit the subject. This was in the penultimate year of primary school, 5th year. The Pac-Man eats the bigger number. Everyone knows that. I before E except after C. To that I say, I deify your deity. You shall not heist my sovereignty. Seize the veil and forfeit the heinous. Weird. Everyone is a unique and beautiful person. I've since learned a good portion of people are driven by spite and advertising. And greed. I attended a Catholic school from kindergarten to university, so I think you know the fact I was told that if I didn't eat my broccoli, the boogeyman would get me. We couldn't use calculators because you wouldn't always carry one with you to help you out, except for, smartphones nowadays. I disagree. I need mental arithmetic at work every day. It's very frustrating teaching student pilots to fly when they can't do simple mental arithmetic. Yes, I have a smartphone with me, but I'm not going to pull it out to calculate my crosswind when I'm just about to land my plane. When I was little, I was told during a DARE program speech that one time a guy went to a party and puffed on one marijuana cigarette and died instantly because of how bad it was for you. I already saw this documentary on the legalization of drugs talking about how there are no reported cases of people dying from weed. I wanted to point it out, but I decided not to. It was from that day forward that I realized that just because you are older doesn't mean that you always tell the truth. Yeah, I was told in DARE that smoking a single joint was the equivalent of smoking an entire pack of cigarettes. Pretty sure that's not true. Diagrams of bodies have blue veins because blood in veins is blue. It wouldn't be so bad if I wasn't in high school when I was taught this. I also got into an argument once with a teacher in 5th grade because I said a desert can be any arid place. It doesn't have to be hot and sandy. He insisted a desert has to be hot and sandy and it doesn't have to do with precipitation. Guys, when you were told in school that Pluto was a planet, it really was. Sure, scientists classify it differently now, but that doesn't retroactively make your teacher a liar. In 3rd grade I had a substitute teacher who tried to tell us that kilometers were longer than miles because the metric system was more efficient. My 8th grade teacher told us that FRIC originated from the acronym for unlawful carnal knowledge. Kids have it easy today with Google and Snopes.com on their phone for calling out bulls. That lactic acid buildup is the cause of sore muscles. It's actually small tears. That E330 causes cancer. That thing is in everywhere, as it's actually just citric acid. The confusion originated out of mistranslation of Krebs apparently, and basically all of physics up until they mentioned Einstein. There actually is not widely approved consensus on the sore muscles. Few different theories exist, tears being one of them. Not me, but a couple of months ago my mom, she teaches 3rd grade, said that some new teacher was teaching her kids that the sun isn't a star, and that stars are really small, nothing like our sun. It's sad that jobs like teaching or being a cop or joining the military used to be jobs that people wanted to do because they were great respectable jobs to have that benefited society. Now they seem to be a last resort for people who couldn't make it anywhere else. It's like a real life equivalent of the Night's Watch from Game of Thrones. No one can remember why it's important and don't think it's worth the time or effort to do anymore. Eventually it's just thieves and murderers being grabbed from jails and given a life sentence protecting the world from the greatest threat of all time. Ignorant children or criminals or terrorists. Muscle weighs as much as fat, because a pound of muscle weighs as much as a pound of fat. I had the worst health teacher. When I was in an English school in Quebec in the 70s we were taught that we were supposed to change our names to French names. Like if your name was Peter you had to change it Pierre. If there was no French alternate to your name then you were obliged to sign your name with a bunch of completely unnecessary diacritic marks. Which was completely subjective and had no consistency, so no matter how you tried to sign your name it would be marked wrong and you would have marks taken off whatever you handed in. It was really our French teachers were just a bunch of buttholes who hated teaching in an English school. The left to right political spectrum, often placing Russian-style communism on the far left and fascism on the far right. This system is too simplified to be correct. There are actually 4 branches to take into account when considering a political spectrum. The traditional left and right refer to the economic attitudes of an ideology or government. So the far left would be fundamentalist socialism and the far right would be market fundamentalism, or neoliberalism. There is then an up and down scale, which is focused on the social attitudes and civil liberties etc. of a government ideology. The top is the furthest authoritarian, or totalitarian government, and the bottom is an anarchist system. The result of this would mean that both Russian-style communism and fascism would be at the top of the spectrum. both being authoritarian in nature, with Marxism and anarcho-capitalism being the extreme left and right of the bottom. Fascism, however, would vary in where it sits on the left and the right, as it is related to nationalism as opposed to economic policy. Most current governments would sit just up and right of the center, varying depending on the strength of the unions in the country and attitudes towards immigration and things like gay marriage. When I moved from California to North Carolina, I found myself about 2 years ahead in school. Obviously, they put me in the gifted program, but that was a huge joke. They basically pulled me from a couple classes, I can't remember which, and had me play trivia games instead during those periods. There was this one other kid from California there, and he acted like the Queen of freaking France, telling everyone that he's from California so he has to be smarter. It ends up that this kid and I are tied at the end of the game. Since the kid's mom was a doctor and the teacher was a nut who decided to ask a lot of super advanced anatomy questions, and so we moved on to the tiebreaker round. The tiebreaker question was asking about the largest desert in the world. At the same time, he blurts out Sahara and I blurt out Antarctica, and this kid gives me this derisive, almost pitying look as if I'd just told him the earth was flat and everything revolved around it. He laughs at me, and the teacher starts laughing at me too. And the teacher tells me through tears of laughter, Marek, Antarctica isn't a desert because it's very wet, and a desert has to be very dry. Given that this was the end of 5th grade, that explanation pissed me off to no end, and so I snapped. I told the teacher she was stupid, marched to the library, brought the encyclopedia back to the room. The librarian was not happy, but she was the one teacher at that school I actually liked, so she was fine, especially when I told her what happened. Showed them the entry which proved me right, and then told the class that they were all stupid, and I was leaving, because I wouldn't learn anything either way so I might as well be around nice people, and that was how I left the gifted program. In Catholic school my science teacher told us all the sky's blue because it reflected off the ocean, that exact quote. That water goes down the drain counterclockwise in the north hemisphere and clockwise in the south hemisphere. It actually depends much more on the drain shape and irregularities than anything else. I went to a Catholic K-8th grade school run by nuns, and while they didn't know crap about the Bible, Old and New Testament, and I'm not talking about interpretation, just real basic stuff they got completely wrong. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.